Welcome to If I'm Honest. On today's episode, I'm talking to my BFF Jill and my favorite white woman whisperer, and we're talking about fighting for your racism. She starts off the episode by talking about what that looks like for her and what it looks like for her early in her journey and what it looks like now. And basically, what we conclude is that there's a difference between authentic allyship and performative allyship, and how our egos play a role depending on whether it's authentic or whether it's performative. And typically, when it's performative, our experience is rejection, and how what do we need to do if we are experiencing rejection because someone has called us in or called us out? What do we need to do? And it's the same old song every time. Recover well. So come on in the room and let's talk about it.
Mhm.
You good?
Sorry. Mhm.
Hi, best friend. Welcome back to the show.
Hi.
What you laughing
I'm
at?
sorry.
What's
I'm
happening?
sorry because it came up. It was like, do you agree to let this person record you? And I was like, well, what if I was just like, leave the meeting? Like, you're on your own. I would never do that
Well,
to
that
you.
would be, you know, we've been talking about this for an hour. So I'm so glad that you're still here.
I'm here, and I'm so excited to talk about this.
Yeah, well, welcome back. We are talking about tell me, fighting for your
We're
racism
talking about
today.
fighting for your racism, yeah. And I just want to say that I'm probably gonna have to like do a little emotional check throughout this
Okay.
process. There's going to
I
be
love
several
that.
moments I anticipate where I'm going to feel feelings. So I just
Sure.
want to say that
I love
to
that you
start.
name that. I think that's a very human response. And I think it's also clear communication. We love to see it. Um, so tell us how you fight for your race and what ways what does that look like for you? What does that
Oh my
even mean?
God.
Maybe we should define it first and then like you tell me as my good white girlfriend how you fight for your
Yeah.
racism.
I also just feel like we should say that what you're asking me to do is basically get naked for your audience,
Okay. Well, take it off.
right?
Take it off. Yeah.
I mean, you want a little boob action?
Come
You a
on.
butt girl? Like
Come on.
I got a little bit of both.
Listen, we give it to us.
All right. So we've had many conversations about this. And to me, fighting for your racism looks like running from pain. At the end
Yeah.
of the day, I think it's a human response to run from pain. And sometimes we have a hard time changing. Change is
Hmm.
hard, you know, developing new practices, all of that feels very painful. And our brains can't really tell the difference
Hmm.
between being chased by a lion or being called out or called in. It
Yep.
both feels like an attack. And
Hmm.
so we run from that pain to try to defend our behavior. So for me, okay, so I think some past behaviors for me when I would fight for my racism is performance.
Yeah, that's
That was
good.
me to the T. Like I would like let me be this woke white woman and use all this language. And in the process, first of all, like looking back on it, I'm like, oh God, like you were so obvious.
Yeah.
Right. But really, what I realized I was doing is trying to make black and brown people, specifically women mostly, like that was
Hmm.
my MO. How do I make black and brown women feel safe with me? And then unintentionally, how am I causing harm in the process?
Right. Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Right. Like I did that a lot. And I think I still do. I think I still do. And I think that I have a really hard time discerning now what's performance and what's really me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
I
think
think
we
that is a past behavior that I'm really working towards fixing.
do you feel like there's something else that you do now? Like as you have grown and developed and more now, how do you catch yourself, kind of fighting for your
Mm-hmm.
racism?
Yeah, I think when I get called in
Ooh,
or
yeah.
out, that hasn't happened in a while, but when I get called in, I immediately, my brain, if I don't say this out loud, it's 100% in here. I will start to negotiate why they're wrong and I'm right, or I'm
Yep.
justified in this
Yep.
situation, right? Like we
Yep.
had a recent conversation, you and I, where I'm going through some shit with somebody, and like I immediately go to like, oh, well, but I'm right in the situation because they are doing X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's, again, like, I totally get that it's a human response. And I have to be honest with the fact that I am fighting for my racism. And I think I saw this so apparently with the whole Buzz Corner thing because it felt very much like a mirror right in my face. Right.
Yeah.
But specifically, I'm talking about the situation when they were talking about like employing Black and brown interpreters, and the hosts were talking about, but what if we have a deafblind individual?
Sure.
That
Yeah.
is what I'm talking about, where we try to find exceptions to
Yeah.
say, okay, in this situation, we're allowed to be racist and discriminatory.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
When
Yeah.
really the conversation was about the overarching system and habits and behaviors that white people do that continue to discriminate against Black and brown people.
Hmm.
But instead, we're like, but what about in this situation? Can we be racist now? Is that
Hmm.
allowed? And I was like, oh, that's me.
Yeah, that's good. You know what I appreciate about this conversation is because performative, being performative and like putting on a show for to prove that your racism, really the fight is that I don't have to change. Like I'm going to stay right here and show you how I am a good white person, and I'm going to show you how I don't, like that's the fight for your racism by using something that you do and pointing it out as good, and it may not be good.
Mm-hmm.
And so we saw that with Bucky when he was like, well, what happens if I see a Black deaf person who needs, an interpreter, and, am I taking my preferred Black
One
interpreter
of
out
my
of the
preferred
fight?
interpreters are Black.
My preferred so you have that. My preferred interpreters are Black, absent but Black, right? And then you also have this kind of shift into white saviorism, which I call out, right? And so this ability to say, I'm good and I will fight for Black and brown people in a way that they have not asked for. That says
Mm,
that you don't have to look internally, that you don't have to evaluate and analyze the ways in which you cause harm, and therefore you're fighting for your racism.
yes. It's protecting the ego, right? Which is, we do this, right? We will do anything. We will go to the ends of the earth to
Yeah.
convince and reinforce that we are good humans.
Oh my God.
Or even to really reinforce the belief that we hold about ourselves. It could be good or bad, right? Like, because a lot
Right.
of us have these negative narratives that we hold on to with dear life. Oh my gosh. But typically, generally, we want to believe that we're good.
Yeah.
And we're going to continue to do whatever we can to make sure we believe that we're good, because we also can't accept the fact that there's not just binary options. It's not
Sure.
just good or bad. You say this to me all the time. You go, hun, you're not bad. You're just white.
Just right.
Right. And
Yeah.
that to me has been a real eye opener, because I too totally accepted the belief that, like, if I am racist, I am bad. Therefore, I
Mm-hmm.
have to not be racist. I
Mm-hmm.
can't be racist and still continuing to be a good person. And I'm going to
Yeah.
fuck up a lot.
Yeah.
That
Right.
option was never on the table until, a couple of years ago.
Yeah. I want to go back to this negotiating and I want to
Uh-huh.
talk about the thing that just happened to me, which was had
Yeah.
the interpreter who was in my DMs talking about how Paris, Tiffany, and I bullied the interpreter. And if you look
Wow.
at the receipts, that is just actually not true. That is not a real thing. Um, but she sent me a series, and I'm not kidding you, maybe 20, 30 DMs, and then she switched to text message. And throughout the entire series of messages that I never responded to, right? She asked me like 20 questions, right? Like this was
Mm-hmm.
the game that we're playing. 20 questions, and
And
she
not
wanted me
and
to
not like
do
simple questions,
right,
like
not simple
complex
questions.
questions.
Exactly. She wanted me to do the labor for her because because that's what I'm doing. Well, Keisha, you're doing this work, and so therefore you must do this work for me. So I run into her in
Mm-hmm.
person after having not responded to her text messages or her DMs, and we started a conversation. And she asked me, she was like, asked me questions about something. She made an assumption about Black culture and she tied that to a specific thing. And I'm like, that is so racist. It's not even funny. The tie was actually, let me just go ahead and tell you the example. The tie was she said, "Thank you so much for telling me about shoes, how you say Jordan and not Nike Air Jordan, right? Like, thank you for telling me that um because I know there's a huge cultural tie to shoe culture and Black culture, and I'm like, shoe culture is global, like it's all over the world, like." Like I'm not saying, but shoe culture could not live on the backs of Black people. And so, like, it's as if she just kept asking me to do labor. And so, what I eventually say to her is, "Hey, listen, I'm not willing to do this labor for you for free. If you want coaching, I'm happy to offer you some one on one coaching. We can meet for 50 minutes. You can come to me and you can tell me what's what. And we can talk through those things because you absolutely need something that I cannot offer you for free."
Right.
And
And
she
just to
said, I
just to
completely, go ahead.
but just to put a finer point on it, like it's not just that you're not willing to do the labor free because you already do a lot of labor for us for
Sure.
free.
Yes.
But in order to sufficiently unpack and address the questions that she had, which were great questions, it would have required hours,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
hours of
Yep.
labor, right? So it's not just like, let me shoot off this quick sentence or two. Mm-mm. It's not that simple. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Right. So, and then telling her that I was offering her this coaching really said, she said I invalidated her experience and
Mm-hmm.
made her fearful not to ask questions or to make comments or to applaud
Yeah.
interpreters for things like this in the future. Right. And so
Yeah.
now you've asked me to do all this free labor,
Mm-hmm.
and you're now blaming me for not giving it to you, and the fact that you are resistant to change. And so, like, all up, in up and through that is a fight for her own racism, and a
Absolutely.
voluntary performance of "I'm good, I'm good, I'm good." And she could have kept all in DMs and them text messages to herself, right? Like that was
Mm-hmm.
voluntary. And it's that kind of way that she's negotiating, you know,
Mm-hmm.
"I'm good."
Yes. And here's what I think was particularly interesting about the situation, because let me just be clear to everybody in the audience. I've been pushing you to offer one on one coaching for a while. I think it'd be incredibly valuable. I think that people would be interested and willing. So if y'all need to contact me, I'm happy to mediate this. But I think that this is a real serious need that our community has. And so I really pushed you to say, offer her coaching. Like she would be a great candidate for coaching because there's a lot to do, there's a lot to unpack with this. And she heard that as a rejection.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
So
good.
there's two things that I think happen. She is performing, right? So she's putting out, I'm a good white person because I'm asking these questions and I'm trying to make this genuine connection. And I use this intentionally because I think that she has the best of intentions, but because she hasn't done enough work, the underlying problem is that she is performing and she doesn't realize it.
Yeah.
And so then when you say, okay, I'm not willing to do this labor for free, she hears this as a rejection.
Yeah.
And what's so interesting to me is that we are now only recently seeing this conversation happen in terms of like misogyny. So
Yeah.
men go to women and say, "Hey, baby, why don't you smile for me?" And when women don't drop to their knees, they get mad
Right.
because they feel rejected, right? And
Sure.
then they start to call names and sometimes even to an extreme violence, right? Like we are seeing this conversation and we're going, yes, we got that. That's wrong. But we're not talking about that in the topic of racism.
That's good.
I haven't seen it in the things that I read and the conversations that I have. I haven't seen that conversation when white people get rejected and then their response is either shut down. I'm not going to ask any questions ever.
Yep.
I'm not going to ask Black people about whatever, shut down, or I feel like you've invalidated my experience.
Exactly. I think the question though that needs to be answered even more than that is what is the difference between performance and genuine allyship? I think people are having a hard time with the difference. And so when you're just performing, then your response is rejection, right? That's what happens when
Yeah.
you're genuinely an ally. If I call you in or I call you out, you sit with that thing, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
take responsibility for what's yours, and you're able to say, I want to be a better human, right? And instead of, so like, what's the difference? Do you have an idea?
I don't have a good answer for that. But for me, what my experience has been is it's sort of been like this,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
So like there was a lot of performance,
mhm,
a
mhm,
little genuine allyship. And then
mhm.
as I learned the difference, it became like this. I think
Yeah,
there's still performance for me.
sure.
I'm just going to say it. Like, I think that there's still performance for me. Sometimes I catch myself in like how I say things
Yeah.
because sometimes I get on autopilot and I'm not questioning why I'm asking something, why I'm trying
Mhm.
to connect with a person,
Yeah,
why I'm responding the way that I'm responding. And I think that's the difference. I think that performance is I'm just doing this without really thinking about the intent behind it, or I'm borrowing somebody else's language.
yes, yes.
I'm doing this like I'll give you an example. When I learned the concept of everybody's always white people are always racist. Everybody's
Mhm.
always racist.
Yeah, ooh, this is
Particularly
good.
white people are always racist.
Yeah,
I was like, oh my God, this is beautiful language. This is performance, right? Like I'm not at the point where I'm going, but why? Why are we inherently racist? And then what's the goal? If we're always racist, what's the goal? Just to be racist? I'm like, all right, okay, well, I'm just going to be, fucking asshole all the time. Or am I going to
yeah,
say, or like, how am I trying to mitigate the harm that I'm causing? Right? Like
yeah.
the underlying questions aren't being asked in performance.
I will
True
add to that.
ally.
I Let me
Yes.
just add to that right quick. Is you're not even aware when you're just saying I'm racist, you're not aware that you're causing harm or how you're causing
Mm-hmm.
harm or what that harm might look like. So you can't mitigate something you aren't able to acknowledge or recognize. And I think that
Yeah.
also is part of that too, is that those the people who are really operating in I'm racist because I'm white, or I'm like I'm racist, and aren't able to tell me why, tell me more,
Yeah.
come on, like talk to me about that. Some of those people are not able to do that. That's performance.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. It's the borrowed stuff. It's the,
Borrowed.
and it's, yeah. And like now I get why I sounded fake because it was like why I wasn't believed. And I remember these moments of like when I started learning about anti-racism and I remember like getting rejected and feeling like I instantly want to go to the shutdown. I instantly want to go, well, I'm not good at this. This is causing me pain. I'm having to like my ego is being challenged. Maybe I'm not a good person. I immediately want to retreat and hide.
Yeah.
And that's how I knew, like now looking back on it, that's how I knew it was performance, right? So
Yeah.
using this example of this colleague that, the situation that you just said, like the reason why she responded is because she's performing.
Yeah.
Now, I think luckily, knock on wood, I'm now in a place where like I thank you, where I can be rejected. And I
Yeah.
have been recently, I have been rejected when I made an attempt to connect. Again, thinking that it's genuine, but like it's not being read as genuine because allyship is not an identity that I get to just wear,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But because I was rejected, because it's not being read as genuine, I can just sit with it.
Yeah.
I don't immediately, no, let me not lie. I do go to the negotiation part. I call you and I'm like, but. And you're like, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then what? Come on into the room. Come on into the room. Right. And then I can start to ask my questions. But what I'm grateful is that it stays here and I get to work
Mhm.
through it
Sure.
before I cause harm and say it externally.
Yeah. One of the things I will say is I didn't meet you, but I was kind of introduced to you as an idea, right? As someone was talking about, and you were described as a woke white woman. That's how you were described to me.
Mm,
And at the time, I think maybe 2017, 2018, something somewhere in there. At the time, Black people were really looking for allies, right? And
mm-hmm.
so that performative language was really good. Like we
Yeah.
needed the performative language to see who was actually doing the work. And then through the
Right.
pandemic, I think one of the things that we found is that people can talk. They can say the right things all the time and it sounds good and it looks good and it's great. But it doesn't stand up in court, right? Like it doesn't hold up. And
And
it
it gets
also
weaponized.
And it gets weaponized. Absolutely, it
So
gets
much.
weaponized.
Yes.
Right. So I
Yes.
I wonder, how you shifted out of this kind of woke white woman to
Mm.
an ally. Like, you heard yourself described that way too, I'm guessing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I heard it.
Okay.
I don't know if I can say that I heard it. Like, which is good because my ego didn't need that feed.
'Cause period. Period.
Period. It
Yeah.
was doing just fine on its own. I don't know. Again, like I think it was so subtle and it took a long period of time. It was this, right? It was
Mhm, mhm.
starting, and I'm realizing people are listening and not watching, but like it
Right.
started heavy on the
Yeah.
performance and less on the genuine, and it just slowly sort of transitioned to more genuine and less performance.
Yeah.
I don't time and like commitment
Yeah.
to learning. And honestly, thank the sweet baby Jesus, I had so many people who were connected to me genuinely and who happened to be Black women who would say, who would ask me questions, who would say, okay, Sherrette, that's all good and great and all that kind of stuff. But what about this? Right.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
first person that comes to mind is Dr. Pam Collins, who I would just kiss her feet as she walks. Like she just is the kind of person who like really made an intentional connection with me years and years and years ago and has continued to show up and has continued to ask me the hard questions. And
Yeah.
this is pre Keisha, right?
Yeah.
Like she was a person that was like, let come into the room, Sherette. Let's talk about this. And was so like gentle with me when I didn't deserve it. And that is kind of the other thing that I think is really important to underscore is that another performance sentence, I guess, a performance concept was that Black people don't need to be gentle with you. Like you don't like we don't Black people don't need to take care of white people's feelings.
Yeah.
And that was actually really helpful because I think the it starts off as performance and it becomes genuine when I'm able to repeat these things. And then it becomes true and clear and understood and it connects. But it takes me a while, right? And so like when I started to learn, like, okay, people don't owe me any favors. Nobody does, but especially Black women don't owe me any favors. They don't need to coddle me. It's not their job to take care of my emotions. So that when situations like when you called me in, it felt less threatening,
Yeah.
right?
But
So I
I
didn't
think we've had
have that like
conversations, like,
rejection response.
we've revisited, old conversations or old situations where it doesn't necessarily feel threatening, but you're like, "I don't know how to respond to that." Right?
Yeah.
And so you kind of, shut down until I'm like, "Yo, where'd you go? Like, how can I keep you engaged in a conversation that for
Yeah.
whatever reason, we're revisiting this conversation. How can I keep you engaged in a conversation that has happened, over and over again over some time?
Mhm.
What do you say then?" It's like a kind of recalling in, like, maybe I haven't fully processed this, and I'm not like showing it to you in order to bash you, but like I'm just processing it and I need you to come into the room. And we've had experiences where you're like, shut down. So,
Absolutely.
what do you say to that?
Oh God. I mean, I think the shutdown happens when I'm trying to protect my ego,
Sure. Yeah.
right?
Well,
Like I'm in my head, I'm negotiating, right? I'm fighting for my racism. I'm like, how can this be true while
yes.
also not meaning that I'm a bad person?
Yes. And
Right.
we've
And
been
there's a lot of
friends and we've
layers.
talked about this.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think for me, and I don't know if other white women feel the same way, but like in the when we really started to connect, like through the beginning of the pandemic and all of that, I didn't necessarily believe that I deserved to have your friendship. And I sort of
That's good.
expected you to be like, I don't have time for this nonsense. Like, you are problematic. Go away from me, right? Like,
Yeah.
I expected to get rejected. And so when I would, fuck some shit up and say some things, and you would be like, hey, can we talk about that? I'm like, here it is. Here's where I'm expecting this abandon to happen.
Well, that's good.
Right.
And
And then I think, no,
yeah.
you go.
No, 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 no. I want you to finish it.
I forgot.
I think there's this there's this perpetual experience of abandonment that I feel
Yeah.
from white people. You pay attention to that because I'm this Keisha talking about Keisha. But I
Yeah.
think I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like you look like you're in, but you're not really. And so for me to think that you're in sets me up for failure. So like you're worrying about being abandoned because you're in, and I'm worried about finding out that I thought you were in and you weren't. But I will
Uh-huh.
say in our friendship, you've made all these other deposits, right? Like you made all these other
Mhm.
deposits and we've had these conversations. Even, we
Yes.
were paired and then I come to you and say, "Hey, what's happening here?
Mhm.
Like why are you not engaging with me on this?" And you come
Mhm.
back, right? You come right into the room, you sit down, and I think that's why our friendship works because I invite you into the room and you come in, right? And I think
Hey,
I
I
made this like
also
slogan cute, but it's a good invitation. If I invite you
sure
in,
is.
it says the onus is on you to walk through the door to sit with me or
Mhm.
to even sit with the podcast and have these conversations because it's difficult. And nobody
It's
and
so
lots of people
difficult.
aren't doing that. Lots of people aren't inviting you into the room.
But I also think that what needs to be really clear is that while I'm walking into the room, I am literally ready to vomit,
Yes, good.
right?
Yeah.
Because for me, again, protecting my ego, me walking into the room is going to be a conversation of how I'm a quote unquote bad person.
Yeah.
And so I have to do a lot of mental energy to say, there's other options between bad and good. You're just white. Like it's like Keisha really wants to be friends with you. You really want to be friends with Keisha. This feels scary, but a lion is not attacking you. Like I have to give myself a lot of like pep talking, and it's gotten easier. But in the beginning, it was really hard because we had a lot of like, what the fuck, and like some like miscommunications, and we had to have a lot of really hard conversations. Now it's so much easier because of the deposits,
Sure. Sure.
and I
Yes.
think maybe that goes back to the transition between more performative to more genuine, is because I've made a lot of deposits into the work
Hmm.
and I can see the change. Like I can see the benefit of it,
Yeah.
right? Like I can see how the learning is benefiting me. And like I think that's really important to name because white people aren't going to do anything that doesn't directly benefit them.
So
And
I
so
guess
in the process, yo,
let me
yeah.
ask you this question though. It makes me think about, so which way is the fight for the racism? It's like if it if I'm doing this thing, that means I'm bad. Is not doing this thing. I don't know. I think my concern is that the fight to not be bad, it feels like you're labeling an anti-racist thing as bad, right? Or
No,
labeling
I
the
think,
work as, but yeah, I want to make the connection here because like people,
yeah.
like you see the discomfort between,
Mhm.
oh man, I'm not bad, or that makes me bad. And you see how there's such a fight for the discomfort, or if I call you in or I call you out, there is such a experience of rejection, and there's all these bad labels to it. But like, how
Yeah.
do we reframe it so that you can stay actually be in a fight and be a genuine and authentic ally?
So I think it's not that the anti-racist process is bad. It's that the truth is bad. So, like, if I'm going through the anti-racist process,
Okay.
the fact is, when I'm uncovering this truth about myself, that gets labeled as bad. The truth is bad. The truth is, I am racist. I'm fucking problematic. I'm misogynist. I am all of these things. The truth is bad. And then if I don't have the tools and strategies to actually address it yet, then I just have to sit with the bad. But like white people understand that to be anti racist is good in theory, but I don't think that enough white people understand that to actually be anti racist means that you have to uncover this truth. It's going to feel like you're bad, but there are more options than just good and bad.
Yeah. Okay.
And I also think that oftentimes when white people start the journey of anti-racism, we don't have coping strategies. we don't have like response strategies like, okay, when I uncover this thing that feels like, I'm a terrible person, then what do I do next? Like, there's not
Right.
enough of those strategies that we know. It feels like we're just ripping off this band-aid and we're having to look at this very deep gash in this wound that we have, and we
Sure.
don't have the medicine, we don't have the like, how am I going to take care of this next? Like, we don't have
Right.
that. So then the result is, let me just keep this band-aid on because I don't want to see the wound.
But anti-racism is fighting the truth, is changing the truth, essentially. So the
Yes.
truth is, historically, I have generally generational trauma from being a Black
Right.
person in America that dates back to slavery and even back to uh, pre-slavery, or like whatever I have been passed down through generations. And likewise, white people in this country have also been passing down this history of oppression and racism and misogyny and all these systems of oppression. So when you come to the truth and you realize that, man, I've been an active participant in this bad system, you have
Mm-hmm.
these negative feelings, this kind of like gross, and then you say, I'm not willing to sit with that because it doesn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the fight for your racism. If you're not willing to sit
Yes.
with discomfort, if you're not
Yes.
willing to sit through the discomfort and name the things and then kind of change your mind, right? Like, like through the process, if you're not willing to do that, that's the fight for the
Mm-hmm.
racism. Even
Yes.
just
Yeah.
accepting the feelings of bad, of the truth, is part
Mm-hmm.
of fighting against racism
Yes.
and all the other systems of oppression. So, yeah, I just want to say that.
Yeah. And this is why you've got a podcast, because
Yeah.
you're able to make this so accessible.
Well, I mean, I'm
And that's
hoping so.
exactly what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
I actually want to
Yeah.
go back to the ego. So
Okay.
I did the episode series thing called See, Now You're on the Podcast. And shout out to my good girlfriend who was in my DMs because now she's on the podcast. But also there's the scenario that I use where the white deaf person says color people, people of color, the interpreter's like, hey, which one do you mean? And the interpreter chooses because the deaf person says same difference doesn't mean any difference, right? And so from that conversation, there was lots and lots of conversations in the comments. There was lots of conversations in my DMs. There's lots of conversations about how you respond to that. What is cultural mediation? And I was initially just going to leave it, right? Like I didn't want, I want it to be a thought provoking question where you sit with it and hopefully you come to the right place. But well, listen,
White people can't be trusted. You got to
yeah,
get
white people cannot be trusted. But this is one of
absolutely
the things that
not.
I saw that I thought was really interesting is I heard things like people say, I'm not letting that come through my body. Right.
Yeah.
I heard people say, but hold on, what was their intention? Right. Like as
Mm-hmm.
a human without an interpreter, and like I've heard the argument that this is a deaf privilege to have an interpreter who can interpret your intention and therefore reduce the impact of not knowing the difference. And I'm and you said when we were talking about it, you said this is a matter of ego. Is we our ego shows up in this process and it influences the decisions that we make that aren't really effective for the deaf person who needs to understand that there is a difference, right? And I
They need
think
to know.
I don't. This is not cookie cutter, not one size fits all. So I don't say that, but they need to. Sir, you need to know it's a big
Yeah.
difference. And as the
Wow.
interpreter, I don't have anybody mediating for me. That you just said to me,
Mm-hmm.
the interpreter, there's same difference. I don't have anybody doing that, and so and it was everybody. It was black, brown, blue, purple. Everybody kind of said the same thing who were on this side of cultural mediations. Why would we say the thing that causes the most harm if we
Mm-hmm.
know that it's going to cause that kind of harm? And I
Mm-hmm.
just want you to talk about the ego piece of that.
Oh, so I also want to just be really transparent and say like I was in that camp too.
Yeah.
Like
Me
until we
too.
talked about it, I was like, why? Why would we cause harm? Because you talked about it in the inward conversation episode,
Yeah.
right? Like, why would we put that out there knowing how much trauma comes with that word? And so I was in that camp too of like, I'm not going to do that. But then um, I think after a lot of conversation and a lot of thought, like, really what I'm saying is I don't believe that this person can handle what's being said, right? And so I'm a parent. I got a 3-year-old, and I don't expose her to things that are like super traumatic, right? Like I'm not going to let her watch some like very violent show,
Yeah.
and I believe that that's a good decision to have as a parent, right?
Yeah.
But we aren't interpreting for 3-year-olds.
Right.
We're interpreting for grown ass adults.
Yeah.
And if we're talking about how Black and Brown people use information that they get to decide who's safe and who's not,
Ooh.
how are we causing harm by sanitizing that message? I
Yeah.
am not saying that we should interpret the N word as white people,
Sure.
but I do think it is important to make sure that that person knows that that word was said
Okay.
without
Yeah, I agree.
directly saying the word, right?
Yeah,
And
I agree.
so in that, like, how do we, and this goes to the anti-audist ally, right? Like, I think that I'm being a good interpreter because I'm sanitizing the message. I am quote unquote protecting this person
Yeah.
like I would protect my 3-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
And that in its core is patronizing.
Yeah. It's helper model. Yeah.
It's helper model, right?
Yeah.
And like, I just want to be clear, like, literally a couple of weeks ago, I felt differently.
Mm.
But I, I think that there's more options here
There are
than
more
just
options.
do I say it or do I not say it? I don't think it's
Yeah.
as clear as that.
Yeah. I think I think one of the things that we talk about, and I don't know the scenario or the situation specifically. Like I really wasn't there, but I think there are things that we talk about where we make the decisions that we make and we're like, well, he doesn't know. And if there's no time to tell him, then you've made a decision against his will, right?
Right.
You didn't allow him that incidental learning
Yeah.
that's going to happen as a result of saying something that really does have a difference and it does have an impact. And now you're experiencing the consequences of a thing that you said, of a fund of knowledge issue, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't have this fund of knowledge, but guess what? You learned today, right? You
Yeah.
learned today. And I think we feel like I don't want to cause harm to deaf people. Like that's not why I got into this field, to be like, yep, you say a thing that is harmful, I'm gonna say it, and then the fallout is gonna be where you are. If I don't have the space and the time to kind of say, hey, by the way, this
Mm-hmm.
is saying this specific sentence in English is going to be harmful. And saying
Yes.
this one is going to be better. But I also want to
Mm-hmm.
say that it wasn't clear. The English of the interpretation wasn't clear at all, right? Did he mean colored people? Did he mean colorful people? Did he mean people
Mm.
of color?
Mm-hmm.
It's just not clear. And both of these options, even people of color, is still hard. Why the hell are you saying that?
Mm-hmm. In that
Even
context, right?
even in that context, even if even people of color is better, but why the hell are you
Right.
saying that? My hackles are gonna rise, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna feel really uncomfortable with the decision that you made. But I think the issue that what we're talking about is fighting for, in this sense, your autism, in the sense that you are making a decision to not allow them to cause the harm that they are causing, is oppression, right?
Right.
And I'm not saying holistically. So I'm saying think about the decisions that you make, and if your ego, right? I'm not going to say this because it's not coming through my body. I'm not going to say this because I don't
Mm-hmm.
because I understand their impact, and I don't know. Our job is not about. It's not us. It's not us.
Mm-hmm.
It's and so like our ego plays a big role in how we make the decisions that we make. And we
Right.
got to check our egos at the door. Like, that's not,
I
Yeah.
I also just want to bring in maybe the opposite perspective, right?
Sure.
So we
Come
talked
on.
about on one extreme where we're the helper model and we're sanitizing the message.
Yeah.
But we could also be on the other end of the spectrum where we're the conduit model. And we're just saying, like, all right, so you learn, you know what I mean? Like this is you go learn and this is the situation. But like there's also other options here. It's not just a binary, right?
Sure.
We
Sure. Come
can,
on.
and I work in partnership with the people that I interpret with,
Yeah.
right?
That's
And
good.
so I can think of many situations where I'm prepping with a deaf person who's doing a presentation and they have said something that is a very common song lyric. And I'm like, FYI, and I wish I could think of the exact song lyric, but this person was telling a story and they said something like, I can't even remember what the song lyric was. Let's pretend like it's, crap. I don't know. I can't remember what it was, but it was something like, I don't know, the rhythm is going to get you. Stop in the name of love. Something that was like really classic.
Sure.
And it made it like they were not meaning it in that way, right? They were just saying, like, this is part of my story. And so, because I worked in partnership with them, I said, hey, you need to know that if I say this sentence in English, people's brains are going to go to the song lyric. And this moment is not funny. And so this song is going to make people laugh and it's going to sound like a clash. I just want you to know that.
Sure.
You still want me to say this in English, right?
Yeah.
So there's other options. So, like, if this interpreter had an opportunity to ask, do you mean colored people or people of color? And their response is, same thing. Why can't we as interpreters go, for hearing people in English, it means something very different?
Yeah.
Why can't we say that?
I think we could. I think maybe that was the follow-up question. I think maybe he was experiencing some pressure from that, from just the
Yeah,
setting, right? And that it
yeah,
was a presentation. But at the
sure.
same time, when the fallout happened, which I don't include because I didn't create a follow-up to it, um, the interpreter in the comments of that Facebook post says that when the shit hit the fan, he stands up and he says, I said colored people. I said colored people. They probably heard colored people,
Sure. Yeah.
right? This is what he said. And the deaf person says, same thing, stop obsess. Same. Stop obsess,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it really is probably a fund of knowledge issue.
Yep.
Um, that probably could have helped with this, hey, there's this thing. But I don't know. I also don't know. Um, I don't know how we should think about the ways that I think there are too many comments. Here's what I'll say is there are too many comments where people are like, we interpret the intent. And I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes that's true. I think it really is true sometimes. What did they
Yeah.
say? What did
Right.
they mean to say? And
Right.
sometimes their impact is what their impact is, you
I
know.
mean, this guy meant to say colored people. Is clear because of a fund of knowledge issue.
Fund of knowledge issue, yeah.
But the intent was very clear. If the interpreter asked, do you mean this or this? And they said same thing, no different. Stop obsess. Like, to me, it's a fund of knowledge issue, which I don't necessarily think that interpreters hold the responsibility to
Yes,
fix.
we don't hold the responsibility for that.
I also don't think it is our responsibility or our job to abdicate from that responsibility either.
I agree.
I think there's somewhere in the middle, right? It depends
Sure.
on. So, like, the reason why I gave the feedback to this presenter is because we have worked together for years. We
Yeah.
have a relationship, right? This person trusts me to make
Mhm.
sure that they are thinking about things that they just don't have access to because they don't hear,
Sure.
right? They don't know what the song lyric is. And right. So I share that information. They were like, oh, gross. Yeah, I don't want to do that. Let's say this instead. Right. But like that really comes with deposits.
I think that's also true. There was another person in my DMs who provided a great story, and she talked about how those kind of miscommunications would show up all the time, and so she would
Yeah.
say, "Hey, this is the impact your message is going to have." As a hearing person, they may not understand what you mean, and that was regular. But when you have relationship, like it really does open a door to allow for more conversation. And
Mhm.
um, I still think there's a fine line between us being honest through this kind of helper model or poor deaf people they don't know poor,
Mhm.
right? Like, let me sanitize the shit out of this message. Ooh, let me prevent the impact. Ooh, you said something racist and it is blatantly and overtly racist. And let me not say that thing, right? I think
Mhm.
this is an example where is blurry, but
Yes.
people who really stand by sanitizing the message, they'd sanitize the shit out of the message if it was not blurry, right?
Yeah.
They sanitized the shit out of that message if it was clear as day that the statement was racist. It's not coming through my body, right? And
Yeah.
so, where is the line, and how do we remove our egos from this space to fight for our autism because it's good? Sanitizing the message is good, or fighting for our
Mhm.
racism because I'm a good white person. Like, how do we
Mm.
get out of that space?
I think this is a conversation that you and I have actually had multiple times when we have teamed together.
Mhm.
There has been several situations that like your comment that you just made me think of is like when we've done some extended jobs together and you have been like, Sherrette, your coda is showing, right? Like you are showing up in a real big way, trying to take care of this whole situation when sometimes you just need to let people be people.
Yeah,
And I have had a really hard time with that. So I think to answer that question of like, how do you get your ego out of the way? You also have to acknowledge the identity that you're bringing into the situation.
that's it.
Because I'm a white woman,
Yep.
because I'm a coda, I show up with a lot of deposits already. Even
Yeah.
if I've never met the deaf person, if
Yep.
they are deaf, if they are white, they're going to look at me and they're going to say, she's coming with some deposits. I can see the
Yeah.
fluency. I can see that she understands me. She's going to get to do a lot more than Keisha's going to get to.
Sure.
Right. So then that allows me to do things like negotiate and hey and FYI and like, or even make the mistakes.
Yeah.
Like in the situation that that person gave you, that interpreter was black, right?
Yep.
So it became really easy to blame that interpreter in a way that I think interpreters get scapegoated a lot. I
Yeah.
do. I've felt that. I've seen it. I get it. But it's real easy to make a black interpreter the culprit, the bad guy in the story.
Yeah. I
So
think
I don't
too,
know.
like even
I
if you
can't answer that
identify,
question.
well, I love what you say. It's like I understand your identity as a black person who has experienced oppression and white peopling on a regular basis. You being deaf doesn't absolve you from being white, right? Like you saying a racist thing and not realizing that it's racist is just typical white people behavior. And
Yeah.
so, right, I'm coming with my own identity, my own experiences, and I'm like, you said it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the
Mm-hmm.
thing. And that
Mm-hmm.
is coming through that. And right, like how do we in terms of race, we have to check that, but also in terms of hearing status. And you have deaf, right? Like as a coda. So
Mm-hmm.
like we have these different lenses that really do show up in a space that show up in that space and it leads to the decisions that we make. And I don't think that's bad. I think it's human.
It's fact.
And
Yeah.
and I think we're all having to do the labor of understanding the decisions that we make. Um, my advisor says, Keisha, just have an answer. Have a bona fide answer, right? Like if you're going to approach your research in this way, you got to have an answer as to why you
Yeah.
did it, be able to explain that. And so
Yeah.
I think as long as we are in the process of asking ourselves a question, because you're not going to always have a Keisha, you're not going to always have a Sherrette who's asking you these questions and
Mm-hmm.
challenging the way that you're thinking about a thing. You got to do that work, right? Like you have to
Right.
ask yourself the question of, why did I make the decision that I made?
Right.
Right?
And I think that's
Why
a really
is another
hard,
decision wrong? Go ahead.
I think that's a really hard thing to take on the responsibility of because I also think because of my identity and because of your identity, we're going to go into a situation and we're going to see and understand the impact in a very different way, right? So like
Yep.
now I may be able to understand the difference of colored people versus people of color. But Sherrette circa 10 years ago, I wouldn't be able to really understand the layers there. And I may choose to sanitize the message because I don't understand what's necessary in that moment. Whereas you're going to come in and you're going to be like, oh no,
You know what I
this is
see?
important.
Immediately, I see the Montgomery bus boycott. I see Jim Crow South. I see colored
Right.
fountains versus white fountains, right? Like that's what I see,
Yes.
right? So it
Yes.
triggers not just this trauma, but this imagery. And
Yes. Oh
so,
God.
and you know, I really have to address that. I really addressed this in the last episode where I talk about how the one interpreter says colored skin, right? He's
Mm-hmm.
talking about who this is the interpreter who's interpreting for Bucky, and he's talking
Right.
about melanated skin. But he says
Mm-hmm.
this thing that
Mm-hmm.
really is kind of up there with the
Ooh,
N
it's on
word.
the edge. Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
ooh, it's close, but it
Oh
tells
yeah.
me about your fund of knowledge. It tells you me about who
Yes.
you interact with. It tells me that kind of thing. And so if you come in, so that's you have your experience of what happens with you, and that's what happens with me when I hear colored. And
Yes.
that's huge.
It's
That's huge,
huge.
which is why he got the response he got. People are like, fuck this.
Right.
Absolutely. I don't care what you got to say. Climate, nothing. I have no
Mm-hmm.
interest in sitting here any longer because you problematic. Right.
Right. Right. And I can hear white thoughts as they listen to this
Yeah.
because this is where it becomes uncomfortable because we're uncovering truth, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
here's
Yeah.
where I think white people's thoughts are going is okay, wow. So the possible truth that we're uncovering right now is I'm going to go into these jobs and I'm not going to know shit about how to discern what's problematic, what's not. How do I clarify? Do I clarify? Do I let them just shit the bed? What do I do? And then usually it's one of two options in my experience, shut down or anchor, right?
Yep.
Keisha doesn't
Ooh, that's
know,
good.
Keisha and Sherrette doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Yep.
Or I might as well just not be an interpreter.
Yep. Yep. Well, damn.
Or I might as well just not, let me just abandon ship. Let me go be an accountant or something like that. Right. Like that's where I can hear people's thoughts. And if you are having that thought, I would suggest that
Yes. Come on.
this is an indication that you are starting your journey and you should just keep going. If
Yes.
you are having an emotional response right now, that is telling you something. Your
Yeah.
emotional response is a flag. It's like, hey, friend, this is an area that you really need to attend to.
Yeah. But
You don't have
this
enough strategies here. Keep working on this
we
area.
talked about this, right? And we talked about the rejection and that feeling of rejection, but we also talked about the difference between performance and authentic allyship. And really one of the big differences is sitting with the discomfort
Yes.
and kind of saying the truth might be bad, but like I'm okay to be in the process of changing the truth about just in my everyday, right? And you know, like you're gonna be uncomfortable and good. Great. I love
Good.
it.
Yeah.
I love it. Sit with it. Sit with it and fight through it and find good people that you can have this conversation with, right? Where you can debrief and unpack the ways that you are
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable and you
And
can
more
stay
importantly, like
calm.
you're gonna be okay.
You're gonna be okay.
You're gonna be okay. Your brain thinks that a lion is chasing you, and it's not true. Your brain is lying to you. It does it all the time, all damn day. But that's my podcast. That's
I
my
love it. I
podcast. That's
love it.
that's the stuff that I talk about. Your brain lies to you. How do you take control of your emotions and your thoughts to get clear on what's really happening right now?
Yeah,
You're
that's
gonna be all
good.
right.
You're gonna be all right. You're gonna be all
Mm-hmm.
right. So let's
Yeah.
stop fighting for our racism and our autism and let's start asking ourselves the hard questions and
Let's
staying with the discomfort. And sometimes it's just pain. It's far beyond discomfort. It is pain. Like shit, I have caused that harm.
literal.
It's
Yes.
pain. So like how do we stay in that? Thank you for
Mm-hmm.
coming, friend. I appreciate you.
Anytime. I
This was
enjoy
good.
you.
I'm gonna need you to start sharing your content with non-coders so that we can
Look,
plug you.
look.
I know, I
We'll talk
know,
about it.
I know,
We'll talk about
I
it.
know. I love the coders though. So shout y'all out. Shout out to Dakotas. She got stuff for y'all.
I do. I got stuff for the Codas. Come talk to me. Come in my room.
Yeah, go into her room. Yes, go into her room. All right, y'all. We'll see you next time.
All right.